Today we continue on with our NHL season preview series. We're still covering the Metro Division, and today we're looking at the New Jersey Devils. Will they be a team that makes some progress? Can they battle for a playoff spot? We'll discuss that scenario coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're previewing the upcoming 22-23 season for the New Jersey Devils. Of course, they had a fair bit of change throughout the offseason. I know they're a team that's up and coming with a lot of top young players, and we're going to analyze and see what we expect from them this year. But first, we're going to recap the 21-22 season, take a look at their recent history, some key team stats, look at how this team has changed through the offseason, young players that could have an impact on this team, and then we'll analyze the lineup that's expected to take the ice on opening night and see how we think they're going to do. Obviously, let's get started first with a 21-22 season recap. Last year was not great for the Devils, finishing 7th in the Metropolitan Division with a record of 27-46-9 for 63 points. Of course, that resulted in another very high draft pick at the 2022 NHL Draft. Of course, they ended up getting top young defenseman Simon Nemec, which we'll talk about a little further up in the prospects part of this video. But they ended up scoring 248 goals, which was half decent, but not awesome by any means, but still reasonably respectable based on what they could put on the ice for 19th best in the league. Goals against, however, was another story and was certainly a major downfall. 307 against for 29th best. The power play was fairly anemic with a percentage of 15.6% for 28th best in the league, but the penalty killing was strong, 80.2% for 14th best. It's kind of surprising. A lot of times when you get really good PK results, you normally get pretty decent goals against results, but obviously 5-on-5, it's much more of a detriment to them than the penalty killing, while the scoring as a whole was better at 5-on-5 and not so great on the power play. It's a little bit opposites there, kind of a unique situation, but obviously overall, like I said, not a great thing. We saw more injuries for Jack Hughes. He was certainly breaking out and having a breakthrough season for his results, for sure. We're going to probably continue to see Hughes grow and develop and put up better results, I think, over the next few years. He's not even close, I don't think, to hitting his ceiling here as of yet, but it's unfortunate that those injuries kept coming. Of course, head coach Lindy Ruff, who a lot of people felt was on the hot seat last year, some were surprised he continued on with the team, will enter his third season behind the bench. I do wonder if he'll enter the season kind of with a little bit of pressure on him, somewhat on the hot seat if they have a slow start. I do wonder what we could see here. GM Tom Fitzgerald, of course, been there a fair bit now as well. I do wonder, after the moves he's made, which we'll discuss momentarily, if Ruff might be on a short leash. If they don't have a great start, we'll see. I don't know. I think we need to see some decent progress from this team for him to hang around. But I do think as well that one of their top young players and former first overall pick, Jack Hughes, I think has a great relationship with Ruff. Certainly had a lot of great things to say. Big endorsement from Jack. And I think that probably played a role in, to him sticking around. A lot of people thought he might be done. And then at the end of the year, I know Hughes made a point to say a lot of great things, not only publicly, but I'm sure he probably did privately as well. And I wonder how much of an impact, that had. Obviously, if the young players, if he's speaking not only on behalf of himself, but on behalf of the group, and they're happy with him and think they can keep progressing, maybe it bought them some more time. So we'll see. They've missed the playoffs for the past 4 seasons. They've only made it once in the last 10 years. Last time they actually won a playoff series was the last time they appeared in the Stanley Cup final. So in the last decade, we haven't seen a whole lot of playoff hockey. Obviously, at one point, the Devils were a stronger team. They've been kind of rebuilding for some time. And obviously, we'll see if this team, which appears to have a lot of good pieces in place, can take some steps forward this year. Now, let's take a look at how this team has changed through the course of the offseason by starting with some of the key additions. Who did Tom Fitzgerald bring in to help make this team better? Well, they went into free agency and they made some trades. They picked up Ondrej Palat from Tampa. So they outbid the Lightning to retain this player. The Lightning wanted to keep him, I have no doubt, but certainly couldn't go to the price point that the Devils were able to, both on term and dollar. So Palat will be a nice pick up for them. He's a clutch player, someone who comes up with big goals. You can probably count on him for 50, 60 points, and he'll be a wealth of experience as well, with Stanley Cups to his name, which will be a good learning tool and resource to benefit the young players playing around him. Obviously, he's not the only veteran on his team, but he's one of the few veterans that have that much playoff experience in Stanley Cups on his resume. Of course, they also made a trade with Pittsburgh, sending Ty Smith over for John Marino. So Marino comes in as another right shot defenseman. They picked up Brendan Smith in free agency as well. They brought in Vitek Vanacek to secure the goaltending situation. And they also picked up Erik Haula from Boston in another trade. So certainly they get some more depth and they get some more help on the blue line. A little bit of everything really. Securing the goaltending department was certainly, I think, a big priority for Tom Fitzgerald. Was a little bit surprised. I wondered what the future might hold for Mackenzie Blackwood, but he still remains with the team. They're obviously not ready to move on with him yet. I figured either A, he would be traded and they would try to bring in like a bigger name who's an established starter, or they'd bring in somebody to be more of a platoon with him and kind of push him. They can work together as a 1A, 1B type of scenario. Vanacek could be that guy, and I do think we could see those two actually help each other in that respect by having some healthy competition between the pipes. You get a different dynamic on the back end with Smith, the physical guy. You get Marino's the offensive guy. Good experience up front with Haula and Palat. So overall, I do like what Fitzgerald has done here with this team. I think those additions should all work out for the most part and be relatively good. Now let's take a look at their key subtractions. Who's no longer with the team? Of course, they had to trade Ty Smith to bring in John Marino. I guess we'll have to see longer term how that works out for the Devils and the Penguins. Not often you see an interdivision trade with young players like that. But obviously Ty Smith was a player who's, I think, had a real good rookie year, then kind of tailed off a bit since, but that's not unusual. It takes guys a while to kind of find their way and build that consistency to their game. Marino, I think, obviously could have benefited from a fresh start and was a player mentioned in the rumor mill for some time out of Pittsburgh too. So to see Smith traded for Marino was a little bit surprising, but we'll see how that works out. Of course, PK Subban, no longer there in the blue line, recently retired on an expiring contract. There was lots of speculation about whether or not he would return anywhere really and continue playing. It looks like there wasn't much out there for him. There was some reports that he would only consider taking a deal in Toronto or Montreal since New Jersey wasn't willing to extend him. I did see some reports early on in the offseason that the Devils told Subban that they weren't going to sign him, at least not initially, but as they get deeper into free agency, depending on how things worked out, they might circle back to him. But obviously that never materialized with the other additions on the back end. They were, felt like it was necessary to move on. And like I said, I don't know if those rumors around PK are true or not, around him only willing to continue playing for Toronto or Montreal. Regardless, those two teams didn't get the interest. And really, I think he might have a more lucrative opportunity in media. Certainly, PK's got a bright future ahead of him in a new direction here. And if he's only able to get league minimum, I don't know what he can make doing media, but I'm sure financially it might be in his best interest to kind of kickstart that next stage of his career. Of course, they are also without Pavel Zacha, who was traded in the deal as well to the Boston Bruins, which brought them Erik Haula. And of course, Jimmy Vesey moves on. Of course, he's on a PTO as well with the Rangers. So obviously, that's how the team has changed, but it could also change by bringing in more young players. We know that this team has a lot of young talent, and obviously, this young talent will continue to blossom here with what they already have. But as far as who can jump into this lineup this year and have an impact, I'd have to say Alexander Holtz is your prime top suspect in that regard. I suspect Holtz is going to have a real good shot at making the NHL this year, and I'm not sure if he's going to be necessarily a full-timer, but he's definitely going to get more of a look than he had before. And I think by the end of the season, I would not be surprised if he is a regular in this lineup playing in your top 9. He may not start there because we'll look at my version of the projected lineup, and we'll see. I had a hard time fitting him in a regular spot, but it wouldn't shock me if the Devils do make a move, or even if it requires demoting somebody or something to get him in there, because he's had a good preseason. He's got a lot of potential, and I can see them working his way in throughout the year, even if it's not at the beginning. Of course, their top pick from this 22 draft, Simon Nemec, I can see him probably getting some time this year. I'm not really sure what the plan is with him at this point, but he's certainly a guy to watch for. He's going to have an impact. If it's not this year, he will certainly have an impact on this team longer term. I think he's probably going to not necessarily, I don't think they need to rush him into this lineup. I'm not sure that the Devils are going to be taking a huge step this year into the playoffs. I know that they will be a better team, but they're in a real tough division like a lot of teams, and it's going to be difficult to say. But another defenseman's Kevin Ball. I can see Ball maybe getting some chance as well. Again, I'm not sure that he starts on the NHL roster, though. And then Nico Dawes, of course, the goalie, would be your main call-up goalie if Vanacek or Blackwood end up, out for any length of time. And, of course, Blackwood has a history of that, so we'll see where that goes. But they do have more youth coming that certainly looks interesting that can help this roster. Now, what's the projected lineup looking like when we get to the beginning of the regular season here on opening night? Well, I would project your top line to be Jack Hughes, Jesper Bratt, and Andre Palat. Palat should be a nice compliment to Hughes in that regard. I suspect your second line most likely consists of Nico Hischier, Dawson Mercer, and Sharon Govich. We'll see. They could do things a little different there, but I would think that that's where your second line is. Mercer, at some point, I could see if he doesn't have a hot start, because he's been up and down, still young, still kind of learning and developing too, that maybe Holtz gets a shot there if he's not producing, but we'll see. The third line could be a veteran lineup of Eric Howla, Tomas Tatar, and Miles Wood. I do wonder what the future of Miles Wood in the Devils organization here as well. I'm not sure that he's got a long-term future, and I can see him being traded to make room here for some of these other younger players. Then I would suspect your fourth line likely is Michael McLeod, Nathan Bastian, and Andreas Janssen. Janssen's another player I'm not really sure if fits here longer term either, and wouldn't be surprised if between him and Wood are probably the two main players I would suspect that we could see possibly dealt to make room. And they don't have to rush that, but at some point, whether it be now into the season deadline or something like that, to make room for some other different younger players. Of course, on the blue line, you're likely going to have a top pair of Dougie Hamilton and Ryan Graves. Your second pair likely is Siegenthaler and Severson, with your third pair likely being Brendan Smith and John Marino. Now, of course, I do wonder what the long-term future of Damon Severson with this team as well. He's on an expiring deal. I've seen comments so far that he said all the right things about wanting to stay, and I'm sure he probably really does. But with Hamilton and Marino both on longer-term deals and Nemec on the way, I do wonder if it makes sense for them to extend Severson and have another defenseman making, $5-6 million. I'm not sure what he's going to be able to command here, but certainly, an upgrade on what he's making now. Does that really make sense for them and kind of box out their top young defenseman? It looks like he could be, a real stud D down the road. So I don't know that we're going to see Damon Severson in the Devils organization long term. I know I've seen lots of people suggesting it's likely going to happen. I don't know. I'm not confident. I don't know that it makes sense for them, and I think they could get a decent return. There's lots of teams out there looking for right-hand D that might have to pivot to a guy like Severson. Look at Ottawa. They've been chasing down Jacob Chikrin. Hasn't been working out because the price is way too high. Maybe they, between the guys like Ethan Bear, Severson, players like that, maybe they pivot like other teams, Vancouver. There's always teams looking for right-hand D, and he's a good one who can, especially can move the puck and be a power play 1 or 2 option guy. I think he's got good value. So I wouldn't be shocked if the Devils move Severson. If not, early, maybe at the deadline. But we'll see. But I think a lot of the Devils stuff is going to be staying healthy. The health of Jack Hughes, Mackenzie Blackwood, and some of these defenders could very well be the telling tale here if this team has any success or not this year. Getting consistent goaltending as well. Certainly the goals against last year needs to improve if they're going to have any shot at moving up the standings. And that power play has to get better too. If the power play gets better, that's going to move your goals for up. Obviously, the PK, hopefully they can manage that. At least keep it consistent and go. But I would say that overall, you're probably going to get a little bit better offensive output. I mean, they added some good offensive players between adding some better depth with Palat and Howla. You get Marino on the back end, so you get some good puck movers there. Between Hamilton, Severson, Marino, they're all decent offensive defensemen. Hopefully we can have a good year from guys like Howla and Tatar as well. Dawson Mercer can hopefully take a step because maybe Alexander Holtz breaks into there. I don't know that they can get into the playoffs. I think I do see them being a better team. It's just such a big mountain to climb to get all the way in. They were a 63-point team last year. I think we could see big things from Jack Hughes. I expect if he can stay healthy, wouldn't be shocked to see him have an 80, 90-point season or something like that. I can see him really breaking through this year. But the health is a key part to that. And we'll see. They also have Luke, who's on the way as well. Of course, he's playing college hockey. I do wonder, though, if maybe when his season's over, if he could sign, maybe we see him near the end of the season. Obviously, he'll be another guy on the left side of the blue line. So, again, another left-hand shot coming. Of course, they get Graves, Siegenthaler, Smith. Of course, Smith came over in free agency. He could very well replace him in the near future as well. They still got between Hughes and Nemec getting into this lineup. You got some other guys there like Marino. Hamilton signed longer term. Graves is pretty solid. Siegenthaler. Like I said, I don't see a long-term future there for Damon Severson. But we'll have to wait and see. But overall, like I said, this team is better. I don't know that they can get into the playoffs. I can see them maybe moving in the division a little bit, but they're going to have a tough time. I think they'll be better than the Flyers, but still, that only gets them to about the same point as they were last year. I do wonder maybe they can compete with the Islanders. The Islanders are a tricky team. I'm trying to determine if everything goes right for them and they get the excellent goaltending on Long Island, maybe the Islanders can bounce back and be closer to what they were a couple of years before that. But you still got the Rangers, the Penguins, the Carolina Hurricanes. They're all going to be really, really tough to beat. The Capitals are another team. They're an older team, but they made some good moves this offseason. They should at least be in the top 4, if not 5. It's going to be a log jam, and I do expect them, the Devils, to probably not make the playoffs, but be taking some good steps in the right direction. And then as some of these other teams ahead of them start to get older, they can probably jump in the standings here in the next year or two. Let me know your thoughts on what you expect from the Devils this upcoming season. We'll discuss in the comments. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.